My name is Richard Noss. I'm Professor of Mathematics Education. I'm Director of the London Knowledge Lab in the University of London. So there are three main things I want to say in my keynote. The first one is what we know about learning is changing. And in fact, I think some of the most interesting discoveries about how people learn and what they can learn are being made in the field of technology-enhanced learning. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. The second thing I'm going to talk about is 21st century skills. For example, everybody needs to know how computers work because it's the 21st century. It's not so simple. Some people need to know some things and other people don't. So I'm going to question the whole nature of what 21st century skills are supposed to be and what they might be. And thirdly, if we know what 21st century skills really are, we can design technologies to help people acquire them. That's the third part of my lecture. Well, I think the skills is the wrong word. I think we should talk about 21st century knowledge. So here's an example. If you go to a factory, you find people using all kinds of technologies that they have no idea how they work. And if everything goes according to plan, they know how to push this button and turn this lever and so on. But they don't have a conceptual framework for what's going on under the system. And if something goes wrong, that can be a very expensive mistake. So the first point is, I want to reinstate the idea that how things work is really an important question for the 21st century. In the 20th century, if you wanted to know how something works, you took it to pieces. Now, in the 21st century, if you take something to pieces, you find nothing except a chip. So the problem is very difficult now. The challenge is very deep because we would like people to know how things work, but we don't have systems that offer themselves to inspection. We have to find ways to show people how things work. So, for example, have you ever noticed that in the latest version of Excel, the formula bar in the top has disappeared? Okay, so that means, in simple language, the way that a spreadsheet is written becomes invisible to the user. And Microsoft have made a decision, because they presumably know that that's most often the case, that the spreadsheet is just the result of somebody else's work. They decided to hide the formula, but you can get it back, but they decided to hide it. I think it's a really telling example that you have this incredibly powerful engine, but by default, you're not invited to open the bonnet and find out how the engine works. And so I think the challenge for us in designing for the 21st century is to build things that are inspectable, manipulable. You can poke them and find out what changes, and so on. Let me give you another example. We've done a lot of research about this, about what people really need in a whole load of different contexts. And in several factories we visited, car manufacturers, for example, we found that people have these incredible readouts of systems and numbers of things changing and so on, but they're read-only. And in one factory we found two shifts, the morning shift and the evening shift, who competed against each other by fiddling with knobs and turning switches. They had no idea what they were doing. So the company introduced a control panel with knobs and switches and levers, and everybody had a wonderful time, but they didn't connect it to anything. And so people were saying, we did fantastically well yesterday because Jim knows exactly how to change the control panel. And they really believed that. But in fact, the company had disconnected the control panel from reality. Now, that's an example of how not to do it. We have to try and reinstate the link between what things do and how they work. I can't pretend that in my institution we're at the forefront of using e-learning techniques for the students. We do what most universities do. We have not particularly innovative use of virtual learning environments. They're clearly everywhere in higher education. My research is mostly, has been in workplaces and is now focused in schools. And I think the schools situation is, we should consider the last 25 years of schools using technology as just a kind of pilot study. And it's only just now becoming viable to do some serious work on changing learning at a school age, because we're only just now getting to the point where people actually have technology that belongs to them. Imagine if you have a laptop, right? Imagine if you had to share it with 30 other people, or you had to go to a laboratory where a man in a white coat has a key and a network that is not maintained properly and so on. That's the situation we have been in schools. And now, for the first time, they all have incredibly powerful computers in their pocket, which they have to switch off when they arrive in school, which is a little bit crazy. But now we really can begin to ask questions about how technology can change the way people learn, which we couldn't before, because they didn't have their own machine.